these aren't the only 5 by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden, and it is 5 Fact.
Morning. Friday morning slurp of my coffee for you there. Hope everyone's well. Let me just make sure that we are live on Instagram. There we go. Right. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie. I am Charlie. This is 5 Fact Friday. It's actually going to be more like, about 8 facts today. These are the things that have happened in the last 7 days that you can go and check out for yourself. I've linked to as many of them as I can below that I think affect the housing market. Bit shambolic this morning, not enough time, too much information. For those of you who don't have half an hour to listen to me ramble on about the whole lot, let me quickly run through the headlines. In no particular order, Hamptons revealed a survey this week showing that the amount of typical profit a house seller makes between buying and selling their house over a 10-year period has dropped by about a third in the last 2 years, right? And that's profit before taking into account any actual costs like mortgage interest or upgrade costs or maintenance costs. That's just literally the difference between the price they paid and the price they sold for. And that price has dropped by about, that gap, that markup, that profit, if you like, that uplift has dropped by about a third, not including in inflation. That's number one. Number two, this isn't news, but it also is news. I'll explain why. Foxtons and Dexters continue to rampantly overvalue almost all of their instructions, causing major problems for the whole of the rest of the market because of how they blunderbuss and carpet bomb their markets, just deafening marketing noise, successfully gaslighting all sellers, whether they go with them or not, that their house is worth 20 to 25% more than it really is. I spent all day yesterday with a London estate agent who is up against this, going through everything they're going through, and I'll update you on that. But I've also got a beautiful example of a Foxtons property that's massively overvalued, huge 200 grand reductions in the first 90 days, still not sold. Number three, the Office for National Statistics repeats its house price growth lie this when it released November's average house prices this week. Let me just check. Yes, that's right. So we've got that to go through again. I did a whole video on that earlier, but I'll just recap it briefly. On the inflation data that was out this week, owner-occupier housing inflation hits 8%, which is the highest on record since they started recording it, the highest owner-occupier housing cost inflation ever. And that's not including the fact that they actually significantly reduced the number because they're excluding the increases in mortgage payments and rents that would make that number much higher than 8%. I've got a clip from Sasha Yanchen's video. I'll play at the end where he explains it nicely. Oh, God, we're only halfway. Right. The Independent put a story out saying 67% of householders see unexpected rises in housing costs. Okay. I thought that was interesting because that to me shows the evidence of the successful gaslighting of how the news media complex makes everyone think everything's going to be fine, and then it isn't. So therefore it's unexpected rise in costs, whereas anyone who's able to look beyond the veil of news that we get can see, oh, it's not unexpected at all. This was utterly predictable. December retail sales figures are down, reinforcing the negative direction of the economy. That's going to continue to affect the housing market. The Royal Institute Chartered Surveyors put up their survey this week, and they see major headwinds for the housing market this year because of gilt yields, which cause swap rates to go up, which cause mortgage rates to go up. Gilt yields rising again this morning. So they dropped a little bit yesterday or the day before when the inflation data wasn't as bad as expected, but they're now getting back up again. This is so that the trend for gilt yields is up. And this morning, Bloomberg put out a survey, and most of the survey respondents who are investors are expecting UK 10-year gilt yields to top 5% this year. which would be terrible for the government's borrowing costs and debt costs. And last, but absolutely not least, the government, in its infinite wisdom, has decided to stop tenants who fail credit and reference checks from offering their landlord 3 or 6 months rent in advance to overcome the problem of their failed reference check. And it's been confirmed by multiple sources that this means now that even if a tenant wants to and says, look, I know I don't have a job, I'm self-employed, my income comes in lumps and chunks, I can't afford it, look, here's 6 months of rent. The law, when it changes this year, will prevent a landlord from being able to accept that. Who does that help, Matthew Pennycook? You haven't thought it through. Who does it help? It only disadvantages people. It doesn't actually give anyone an advantage, you absolute numpty. Right. Sorry, it's just chaotic this morning. Let's say, hello, everybody. Spherical Hang, that's a new name. Good morning. Super Ted, Carlos, Paul, John Edwards, Yachik D, Imdadol, Spherical Hang. No, it won't be a 5-minute video. It's a 5-fact. And Abigail, hi, everybody. Right, okay, that was the quick run of it. I've now got some stuff to share with you on screen to go through some of this in more detail. Before I get into this, I would just like to say that 2025 is shaping up to be a really bad year for the housing market in terms of housing market functionality, in terms of how easy it is to move house, to buy or to sell or to rent. Uncertainty is off the scale. Everything's going against it financially. There are some potential winners from this, which is, of course, people who are upsizing. So there is still resilient demand from first-time buyers, because first-time buyers who've been saving for years aren't going to not buy when they finally get to the point that they're ready to buy just because the economy is going down, because they want somewhere to live. So I'm not saying that I think prices are going to fall across the board. I do think that's likely to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I know some of you struggle with the difference between those two things, right? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying I think it's quite likely. Something being likely doesn't mean it's going to. Something being likely isn't a prediction. A prediction is it will happen. Something being likely means it could happen, and I think it's likely to happen. That's not a prediction. Knuckle-dragging boneheads. Okay? Because there are so many unknowns and uncertainties this year, increasingly in the economy, the political landscape, law changes, and as that independent article shows, people unexpected and agents continue to overvalue. And I think there's going to be a cliff edge at some point, not in the whole country in one go, but in small local markets at the time that it affects them, where suddenly there's so much overvalued stock on, it reaches a tipping point. It won't happen everywhere, but in some places it will. And this is what I want to talk about with the Fox. I'll come on to that with Foxtons in a minute. But with stamp duty going back up or the thresholds coming back down, there's both actually, thresholds coming down and rates going back up on the 1st of April, there's going to be a cliff edge of activity. It's going to drop in the new year, in Q2. Because stamp duty is a moving tax. As if moving wasn't hard enough already, they're going to make it harder. Mortgage rates are looking as though they're going to continue to keep rising, not massively, but they're not coming down. And even if the Bank of England does cut the base rate next month, that does not mean mortgage rates will come down, because mortgage rates are more in line with swap rates, which are more in line with gilt yields, which are just rising inexorably and are expected to continue to do so. So with rising mortgage costs, that has an unavoidable mathematical impact on what buyers can afford to borrow and to pay, which has an overwhelming effect on the demand as a whole. As more and more people find that they've got unexpected rising costs, people's buying power, even cash buyers' buying power, gets eroded. There is more and more stock coming onto the market that's not selling. It's increasingly a buyer's market, and that might sound like, well, that's great news. Yeah, in a way, of course it's good news if, as a buyer, you've got more choice and prices aren't running away from you up to the moon. But it's just more difficult to buy when the market isn't running very well. And pipelines, in other words, the time it takes for an agreed deal to complete, are still painfully long. And all of these extra impacts that are arising, none of them are good. I wish there were some good ones. I wish there was something that was making me say, oh, this is great news because transaction volumes are going to pick up. That's what I wish for, more transactions, because more transactions helps everybody. Guys, I'm not a mortgage broker, so I don't answer mortgage broking financial questions. Alvaro, sorry about that. That's a question for a mortgage broker, and it's just a maths question as well. So if you put the numbers into a calculator, you'll get your own answer. Okay. Let's start with the RICS survey briefly. I'm not going to spend long on these. I want to get to the Foxtons one. So, headwinds moving forward is what the RICS survey says this month. They are expecting that's about as negative as you'll ever hear them get. Buyer inquiries metric turns a little flatter, and an increase in new instructions. Right. House prices now seen rising across all parts of the UK. They must just be believing the ONS because the RICS survey doesn't measure house prices by number. It's a sentiment. Do you think they're going up or they're going down? It's literally an up or a down. What do you think? And they go up or down. And with the relentless gaslighting and brainwashing from Halifax and ONS about stuff going up when it's not, I think a lot of agents, because I mean, house prices going up across the UK. Again, it's a sweeping average statement, and it's certainly not true. And in certain markets, in certain parts of the market. The links to all of these are below in the description if you want to check for yourself. Right, this is the Hamptons story, where they're saying house seller gains are reducing. So that's the difference in price between when people buy a house and when they sell it, and it's roughly on average about 8 or 9 years. And if you go and read the details in here, you will see that the myth about house prices doubling every 10 years is just absolute rubbish, right? Regional variations persist, but the gap is narrowing everywhere. Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing. But what it tells you is the long-term trend of nominal house price growth is reducing, right? And again, worth bearing in mind for those of you who think that buying a home is a great financial investment, which it isn't anymore. Used to be, not anymore. Right, the ONS. I did a post on here on X explaining it with the actual numbers in there. In this week's release, they claimed that the average UK house prices had risen by 3.3%. I won't bore you with the details. It's in there. The actual truth is 1.7%. And the reason for the difference is that they are comparing an unrevised figure with a revised figure. They are comparing apples with oranges. And that creates literally a lie. It's like saying, It's like you get the idea, right? They're not comparing like with like, and it's their own numbers prove it, right? Because they're saying that the November 24 house price is 290,000, okay, and that's up 3.3%. Okay, well that implies that the November 2023 average should be £282,000. But if you look at their 23 output, it's £285,000, which is only 1.7%. Okay, it is absolute gaslighting. It's just complete gaslighting, and these are clips from their actual pages, right? And the links to them are there on as well. So, link to that post below. Go and take a look at it, see for yourself. And the reason that this is important, right? It's really important. Everyone needs to understand that this is a really big deal about the ONS, because when the ONS month after month after month after month pumps out this drip, house prices up, house prices up, house prices up, and it's not true, it leads to both sellers and buyers and agents all making decisions based on misleading information. And the question you have to ask yourself is, if they were producing accurate data, or if they were saying, we are consistently revising our things down by 2%, right? So please factor in that for the last X years, our initial readouts have been revised down by an average of 2%. If they said that, that would be okay, but they don't. They never say that. The data's there for you to go and look at if you want to, but they never say it. And so because they never say it, people are making decisions based on, well, the ONS said it, and they've said it every single month, and it's on the website, and the government says it, and the news says it. And, so imagine if that wasn't the case. Imagine how different people's buying decisions would have been over the last couple of years if the ONS wasn't repeatedly lying every month about year-on-year house price growth. By the way, they also said this week that month on month, they didn't say it, but the numbers showed it. House prices in England and Wales in November, according to the ONS, were £3,000 lower than in October. Right? That's a 1% drop. In fact, in Wales, it's more like a 1.5% drop. In 1 month of ONS house price data, it didn't get a mention in their bulletin. You had to go and look for yourself at what they said England's price was this month and what they said it was last month, and it was down £3,000. Not mentioned in their bulletin, not mentioned by a single media outlet that I saw. House prices fell 1% in a month, according to the ONS, unreported. Do you think that if that hit the headlines this week, it would change people's decisions? And guys, it's not that I want house prices to fall. I want people to be able to see the truth and make this massive decision about whether to move house or not based on truth, not based on lies. Because if you engage in a massive commitment based on lies and then turn out later to find out that you're financially disadvantaged, that's what's happening to more and more and more people. Oh my God, there's a fact I've completely missed out. The Bank of England did its lender survey and released it yesterday, and their lender default projections. Here we are. Let's share this. I mean, this really should have been one of the major facts of the week, but it just came up too late and I wasn't ready. So that orange diamond on the left this is quarter by quarter lender default rates. And the blue bars are the actual default rates, quarter by quarter, going back 5 years. Just on the left-hand side, ignore that right-hand side of the page there, right? Just this secured lending I'm looking at. Okay, so if you look in the last 2 years, right? So Oh, look at that. In the middle of 2022, when I said the housing market was turning, default rates started to go up. So they went up and up and up. And they started to ease a little bit, but now they're expecting default rates to go up. And again, on its own, this isn't massive news. But when you combine it with all of the other news and think, what is going to be the combined effect of all of these things on the housing market? So we've got lenders projecting a significant bounce in default rates on secured lending, in other words, on mortgages, right, in Q1 of this year. What's next? What do we got next? All right, yes, this is the owner-occupier housing inflation that I mentioned, and as you can see there, the black line, this one here going up here, right, 8% that's reached. So again, this affects the financial equation of owning a home. Then we've got the independent story. HSBC urges people to take up support as new figures reveal the scale of the housing crisis. HSBC urges people to take up support. What do they mean by that? Take up what kind of support? But is that a positive sign for the housing market, do you think, or a negative sign? Now, I don't know if you guys know Rob Moore. He's the very wealthy multimillionaire landlord. He put out a video yesterday expecting, so he is expecting, as someone who owns, I think, 300 flats, he's expecting a house price crash this year. I'm not. I didn't say it. If it did happen, I won't be surprised. I'm still expecting a slide, because I think what's happened is that the government has actually effectively, by tweaking the dials on lender forbearance and on the misreporting of data and that kind of stuff, what they've done is they're kind of cushioning the blow. So it's not so much of a crash as a long slide. Prices are sliding. Today, we've also got, according to John Stepek, who's a Bloomberg journalist, absolutely woeful official retail sales data out of the UK today. All right, woeful retail sales data. But let's get to this one. This is what I want to talk about. This is what I really want to talk about and spend a minute on this. Right, this is a fairly disappointing photo of a property that's for sale with Foxtons. And this is on Rightmove. And this was initially launched exactly 3 months ago to the day, 17th of October 2024, at £900,000. It's now down to £700,000. So they've dropped the price by 200 grand in 3 months, or 22%. And it's now gone under offer, right? So that's finally, they've dropped it far enough. So this backs up what I've been trying to say to everybody. And the day that I spent yesterday in an estate agent's office all day, it really reinforces this point, which is that because of all the things I keep mentioning about the ONS, about Halifax, about gaslighting, about what's reported, about what's not reported, etc., 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 about the downsizing trend, all of these things, and it's worse in London than anywhere else. The overvaluing. So the agent I was with yesterday, they're a really good quality independent agent. They are a family-run independent estate agency business. Been there a long time, well regarded. And basically, the conversations that they're having with almost every seller is, well, Foxtons and Dexter's said this. We don't want to go with them because we know that they're terrible people, but we do want to go with their price. If that's you, if you're watching this video and you've done something similar where you've had Foxtons around, I mean, honestly, if you know how badly they overvalue, why are you having them around in the first place? They're disingenuous, they're misleading you, they're breaching the Property Ombudsman Code of Practice on valuations, they are breaching it with impunity on a daily basis. They're making all sellers in an area, because you've got Foxtons and Dexters and Kinleys, and they're all out there saying the same thing. And so people go, well, we'll ask the big boys because they probably know, and then we'll get the nice small local agent to sell it. But we'll make them sell it at the Foxtons price. They sat there and went through all of their current instructions that are on the board with me, how long they've been on for, what they came on for, what the story was, and each story was so similar. And they had properties on there. I mean, I remember the one that stuck in my mind is that the one was on at £1.4 million. They're like, yeah, that's easily £300,000 too much money. And they've got these properties, and the sellers have just got it stuck in their heads. And I said, so what are you doing? They said, well, it's a bit of a Mexican standoff. We don't want to damage the relationship with the seller. We said, we're just going to hope that they're going to come to us and go, look, what do we need to do? Because it's always drop the price massively. It's always drop the price. But sellers don't want to hear that. Let me play you a clip. I've been meaning to play this clip to you guys for ages, and I was going to do a whole separate video on it, but I haven't had a chance. Let me quickly play it to you now so that you can see exactly what it sounds like when a seller is in denial, right? Witness this.
Our house has been on the market for 67 days with no viewings until today. So if you've been with me for a while and been following like our selling journey, you'll know that we had one viewing request last month and it was a no-show. If you're new here, we've been on the market now for 67 days and I literally had nothing. So, okay, things that we have done to help move the sale along. We've listed with a second agent. We have dropped the price twice. Please don't make any comments about the house price because I'll go to bed and cry tonight. It's definitely not overpriced. I've joined about 30 different Facebook groups.
Stop it. It's definitely not overpriced. It's definitely not overpriced, right? Just take it from me, right? It's definitely not overpriced. Yeah, we've got no viewings, no one coming to see it. It's on with two agents, but it's definitely not overpriced. That was literally exactly that moment. That is hardcore delusion.
To bed and cry tonight. It's definitely not overpriced.
Hey, it's definitely not overpriced. So that is a seller telling themselves that it's definitely not overpriced. No. And what an agent needs to say to a seller like that is, how do you know? It's all you got to, like, how do you know it's not overpriced? And this is an uncomfortable question, but if you push it, they're going to, oh, well, we've been watching the news. I mean, the ONS says house prices are going up, and Halifax says house prices are going up, and the record house prices, and we look at the other asking prices of other properties. There's definitely not overpriced. And there are more and more and more people with that, more and more sellers in that mindset. Now, I'm not criticizing that lady or anyone else that's selling who has had estate agents, multiple agents, tell them to put it on at a certain price. And then they've watched the ONS, and then they've watched the Halifax, and all of the house price tards that go on about how house prices are record and double every 10 years and it can't go wrong and you always make money. Because I had actually a seller who's a follower of the channel who heard me on one live stream one evening saying, I think at the larger end of the 4 or 5 bedroom properties, pretty much across the board, 20% overvalued. And this seller got in touch with me. He said, when you said that to me, he said, it was like, it woke me up. It was like a gong going off. It's like, oh my God, it just hadn't even occurred to me that we might be that far away. And this was a seller who, having heard me say that, was like, okay, what does that mean? What if we are overvaluing that much? What do we have to do about it? Because he was a seller who understood that the market is whatever the market is. And if we're ridiculously far above the market, we're wasting our time, wasting the agent's time, we're never going to get to move. So I don't know what to tell you guys. Let me remind sellers, there are 3 prices. What you think it's worth, which you have no basis for, what the agent thinks it's worth, which is a biased guess because they want your business, and what the market will pay for it. Which one of those three matters? It doesn't matter what you think your home is worth. You need to look yourself in the mirror and repeat it. It doesn't matter what I think it's worth, because the market will pay what the market pays. It doesn't matter what I want for it, because if that's not what the market will pay, it doesn't matter what I want for it. It doesn't matter what the agent said it's worth, because they're mostly exaggerating to get my business. It only matters what the market will pay. I just can't, and it's like, it's almost anyone I talk to who's in the process of right now of saying, yeah, we just can't, we're really trying to sell it, and the agent says the market's okay, we just can't get our head around why it's not selling. Have you dropped the price? Well, yeah, we've dropped the price once. We did that. We've ticked the price drop box like that lady just there said. We've dropped our price twice, so it can't be that. You have to meet the market. The market decides. And it's the market that decides what rent to pay as well, not the landlord, not the government. The market decides what rent to pay. A tenant decides whether to pay the market rent or not. People don't understand it. It's so frustrating. Right. Have I missed anything here? I've done the defaults. I've done the bad retail data. I've done the HSBC urging people to take up support. I don't know what they mean by that. OOH done. Yeah, ONS lying done. Okay, I've got time for a few questions. What do we have? Hi guys. Let me just quickly. Yeah, you've got rising stock levels, as the RICS has confirmed today, right? Rising stock levels, rising defaults, rising mortgage rates, falling employment, falling job vacancies. Sagar DXB says, any thoughts on people who are about to remortgage in the next few months? My first thought is talk to an independent broker. And if you don't have one, I currently work with two fantastic independent whole of market brokers who I work with because I trust them completely. I trust them to give the right advice. You can talk to my mortgage brokers there. But generally speaking, what you've got to find out is whether your current lender is going to require a revaluation of your property or not. Some do, some don't. And if there is a revaluation required, and if prices have come down, that's the worst case scenario where you can't remortgage, and then they force you onto the standard variable rate. Alex Jenkinson, why do people make life so difficult for themselves? It isn't your job to know the price. That's why we have a market. The market will tell you the price if you get competing buyers. Someone's been listening. Thank you. No, I'm sorry, Anthony. Here we are. We've got a live viewer right now in this delusional mindset. If someone doesn't want to drop the price, it's because the price they have set is what it is worth to them. No. So with that logic, they could go, well, I decide my house is worth £1 billion. That's what it's worth to me. It's worth £1 billion. So I'm not selling it unless someone pays me £1 billion for it. I get what you're saying if you're saying you wouldn't sell it for less, but that doesn't mean it's worth it, right? If someone doesn't want to drop the price, then they don't want to sell. If you don't want to drop the price, it means you don't want to sell. That's what it means. They don't want or need to drop it unless they want to sell, right? This is exactly the problem. It's not rocket science. If you want to sell, then you need to drop it. And if you don't want to sell, then you don't need to drop it. If you don't want to sell, why are you on the market? Mark Stratford, Agreed. We've just sold in Darlington last November and had price to sell. It worked. Joshua Towers on X says, we own a 3-bed terrace in southeast London. House a few doors down, exactly the same, went for 530k in the summer. Do you know that that's what it completed for? Don't look at the asking price that was shown on websites when it went under offer, right? Do you know that it completed, and do you know what price it completed for? Don't assume it went for the asking price. We've recently been given 150k inheritance. Should we upsize now or wait and see what the market is doing? Our max budget would be 750, but would mean a bigger mortgage. If you'd like to upsize now, it's a good time to upsize now. Waiting to see what the market is doing, like how long do you wait and what are you waiting for? I think that never wait. If you'd like to buy, if you'd like to upsize, go out and see what's out there. Your first step, though, as an upsizer, is to get off, not put your house on the market. That's not the first step. That's one of the steps. But if you actually want to know what you can upsize to, you need an offer accepted on your property, or at least to know what the offers are. Okay. So if in the situation that you describe, you've got inheritance, you're financially in a position to upsize, the next step is go to an agent, say to them, I don't want to know what you think it's worth. I just want to know what offers we can get, right? Do not mention a price to me. Just talk to me about how you're going to bring it to the market to make sure we get competing bidders and find out what the best price the market will pay for it is. Then you can decide if you want to accept that or not. And you'll know exactly what your budget then is to go and buy somewhere. And you'll be in a better position to buy somewhere when you want to upsize. But it is a good time to be upsizing. I'd start the process, because waiting to see doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form. Because what are you waiting exactly to see? So just get stuck in. Johnny B, is there any other industry where people are more obstinate to price depreciation? Absolutely not. And it's funny. I know that I might come across as harsh to some sellers, because especially when you think that the price you've arrived at, you've done it, and you think you've done it realistically, but especially when there's family, there are children involved, there are kids' futures, and you had an idea of equity in your house. The sheer millions of homeowners right now who are making misplaced assumptions about how much equity they've got in their property and making life plans based on that is just a precursor to huge amounts of disappointment. But the thing is, it doesn't matter if your equity in your home is less than you thought when you're upsizing, because it only matters what you can buy the next property for as well. So if you get 100 grand less for your home than you thought, but you get 150 grand off the property you're upsizing to, it doesn't matter, does it? Okay, Joshua, completed for 5:30. Okay, yeah. So, you've got a working assumption there. Don't forget, if they completed before the budget, don't assume that yours is worth the same now. All right? Maybe it is. Maybe the demand for it still is good. And if you know the owners of that place, I'd see if they had a good experience with the agent or not. Go and talk to that agent that sold that property. Any other questions? Yeah, that's the other thing. I've got I've got Sasha's video here. We are in recession by the government's own definition. We're technically in recession, right? But, and here's an explanation of it. It isn't announced because it isn't in the right 6-month period. It isn't in the Q2 and Q3. It's in the 6 months to November. So that doesn't count. Just guys, watch this, please. Just watch this. This is Sasha Yanchen's new channel, by the way. His Sasha Takes on UK. Just watch this. It's really worth watching.
But here is the detailed table. This is the GDP index to 4 decimal places, and the UK GDP in November is at 101.1406. 3 months before that, in August 2024, the index was at 101.2642. So in the 3 months from August to November, the UK economy contracted. And 3 months before August is May. And in May, the index was at 101.2797. So in the 3-month period from May to August, the UK economy also shrank. So you now have 2 consecutive 3-month periods in which the UK economy has contracted. But you won't read about this in the media. No, because the media is busy trying to say how everything is just fine. Of course, the policies need some time to really take effect. You can't possibly use the 6-month period to November. You have to wait until the end of December to the December data, because you can only use calendar quarters. You can't use any 6-month period. And why can you only use calendar quarters? Well, there isn't any particularly good reason. When the December data does come in next month, it will still not be a recession because Q3 was slightly net positive to September. So the earliest at which a formal recession could be called will be when we have the Q4 2024 and the Q1 2024 data, and we will have that in May. But then also remember that the GDP data is adjusted for inflation by removing CPI. CPI does not include housing. If the GDP data was adjusted for CPIH, which does include housing, then the UK would already be sitting in a formal recession because CPIH is running about 1% higher than CPI, and CPIH is a more accurate representation of reality. So the reality is, well, the recession is here. In the last 3 years, the economy has grown by 1.1%, but in the same time period, according to the Office of National Statistics, the population of the UK is growing by approximately 1% a year. Pretty much 100% of this growth coming from immigration. So in the 3 years since 2022, the economy grew by 1.1%, but the population in the same time period has grown by about 3%. So GDP per capita has been reducing in the last 3 years. The economic output of the country per person in the country has been going down. And the truth is, this is a much more important measure than just the overall GDP number. If you extrapolate it, right, if the economy grew by 2%, but the population grew by 100%, well, the economy per person would be much worse, right? It's the same principle. Because the reality is that the economy per person in the UK
I've just put a link to that video in the live chat, and I recommend that anyone who cares about understanding what's really happening in the UK economy checks out that video. And he's got a new channel that just talks about the UK economy. So I would recommend having a look at that, because he goes on, in fact, to talk about how the owner-occupier housing inflation uses a weird assumption about mortgages that makes it look less than it is. Okay, guys, I've got to crack on with my day, as I'm sure you guys do as well. I can't believe that this many of you watching on a school day, not even lunchtime. And as ever, people still need to move house. People will still want to move house. If you're in a position to move house, be out viewing. If you've got to sell something to upsize, find out what offers you can get. There's no point going on the market at an optimistic price. The more optimistic your asking price, the fewer people want to come and see it. Tell your agent that you understand that the market sets the price at which your house will sell, and therefore you want to make sure that you get competing bids. That's more important to you than what asking price you use. And then ask them to guide you on the asking price so that it's not too high, so it looks better value than others. Unfortunately, there are plenty of agents who will look at you and their eyes will go cross-eyed and go, I can't, sorry, no, we just have to overprice everything. And we can't do that because then we'll make all of our other class properties look too expensive. So you've got to find an agent that understands that's the intelligent thing to do, right? competing bids. Without competing bids, you haven't found the best market price for your property. And sellers, remember, get your conveyancing done first. And by the way, I had someone tell me that they spent 3 hours ringing around conveyancers as a seller, saying that they wanted to get contract ready and bring their property to the market contract ready to make it more appealing to buyers and to speed up the sale process. And all the conveyancers that seller spoke to it, oh, no, that's not how it works. No. Give us a call back once you got an offer. And if you're a seller, never use a conveyancer that says that, because it demonstrates two things. They don't understand that by getting you exchange or contract ready, they're improving your chances of selling. Either they don't understand it or they don't care. And secondly, they don't understand that it shortens the process. So any conveyancer that says, no, come back when you get an offer, jog on. You do not want to use those guys. I work with two firms, Thomas Legal and Sweeney Miller, both outstanding firms who would be more than happy to get you on board and get you sale pack ready to improve your chances of selling. Talk to those guys on this link here if you want to. Obviously, there's a no obligation conversation you can have with them first and get a quote from them. I could keep on rabbiting for ages, couldn't I? Any last minute questions before I go? No, that's not true. AU, NZ and non. The house prices are coming down despite the accommodation crisis. The accommodation crisis is localized, it's not national in the UK. Yeah. Dennis Haggerty, death, debt and divorce will force property into the market. Big redundancies in financial services this spring, summer. Yeah, and guys, we've already stopped talking about the fact that the budget and the national insurance rises in April. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath in the economy this year. Anyway, I'm definitely going to go now. I keep saying that, don't I? Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great weekend. And if you need me, mhwc.co.uk and also on LinkedIn, and you can book time to talk to me, one-to-one video calls if you need them, or join the Charlie Private Movers Q&A Club as well. All in my links on my Linktree link below. Have a great weekend.